let's ask you how did you learn filmmaking? I mean, we always think, filmmaking, going to a film school is so important, etc.
I was rejected by every film school.
Great. So tell us, how did you learn it then?
I don't know, I discovered cinema too late. I think I used to watch Hindi mainstream movies. And I grew up in Banaras, in Varanasi. And my family was a family of mathematicians. So everybody is very strong about mathematics, and my father is very proud about mathematics. So I always chose a subject they knew nothing about, so I chose biology. So all my life I've done things like that. So my father, because he did not know anything about biology and what I was, so I just kept pursuing that, so I wouldn't get questioned at home. And my father was in a very transferable job. He set up most of the powerhouses across India. And so I was sent to a boarding school. And I was very young in my class. I was always younger than everyone else. So it kind of, at that young age, kids can be very cruel. If you're smaller and younger, and they would bully you. So to escape that, I would spend all my time in the library. So I grew up in a library. So it's like library is a safe place for me. So if you look at my house, it's also like a library. So anywhere I go, I build a library around me. So I feel safe there. And I end up just reading a lot. And coming from Banaras without any opportunities, I could not find anything that resonated with me except literature. And I was studying to be a microbiologist. And that's when I discovered cinema, when I was in university, at a film festival in 1993. And suddenly I saw something that resonated with me. I was like, this is what I want to do. And it did not take me much time to leave. I just packed my bags, told my parents, and they were very disappointed in me. And I upped and left. I was 19 years old. So I started very early, and I had no idea about film schools. So by the time I applied for all film schools, it's like I say it like a joke, they rejected me. I was always very late. So in the sense, I applied for film schools and everything, it was when the admission dates were closed. I think somehow that worked for me. It worked for me because all my friends got through film schools. Whoever, like Imtiaz Ali was in XIC, my friend Sachin Kumar was in FTI, somebody got somewhere else. So I got a place to stay with them. But I vehemently went on my own journey, reading and writing. And I think what came very handy for me was, I had this immense capacity to write. I would write 20-page letters to my father. I would write non-stop. So I would, like, essay competition, I would make up my own answers in history exams. But they were so long, I think teachers did not read through and they just gave me good marks. So I could fill sheets like nobody else. And I till date write like that. I just finished my script this morning in the hotel. So, and because of that writing capacity, I was fortunate because I came to the city of Mumbai at a right time of transition in television. India had just discovered daily soap operas. And all the soap operas were being controlled by very English-speaking South Bombay people. And they really needed somebody who could write in Hindi. At the same time, they were very privileged elite who did not want to give credit. That worked for me. So I could hone my writing skills on their expense. So I wrote without credit, I got good money. And I had to churn out 3 episodes a day. And that was the beginning. And I kept discovering cinema. And then I think my real growth in education started when I started working in a place called Media Classics, where I met these 2 very geeky brothers, Sriram and Sridhar Raghavan. And Sriram was doing Raman Raghav, and Sridhar was always writing He was also another person who used to churn out episodes for CID. He also had this immense writing capacity. And we bonded very well, Sridhar and me. And Sridhar put me on a journey. He gave me a book by James M. Cain to read. Anybody who wants to be a writer, I always tell them, I've made my own separate course of how to learn writing, which is like start reading James M. Cain first. and it somehow, he kept introducing me to these books. And I went on my own journey of reading and writing and watching films. And because I had not seen anything, they would sit there and talk about Godfather. I did not know what Godfather was. They would talk about Taxi Driver. I did not know what Taxi Driver was. All I had seen was De Sica's movies, and I had seen Italian neorealism at the festival. And then I would talk about that. They knew more about more filmmakers. So I was on this curious journey of consumption. And just consuming movies day and night, which went on for a long time. That's how it all started.
But what about the actual art of writing a script, where you develop characters, you have, all this business of the 3 acts, all that?
I don't like that whole 3-act structure.
Yeah.
I think writing is a very personal thing. And this is the reason why I was asked to leave from FTI when I was teaching writing there. Because I would tell them, just throw the theory away. And because writing is not mathematics. And 3-act structure makes it into mathematics. It all becomes very, there's no soul in it. And I want to see the writer's soul in it. And my writing process became like, I just write. So what happens is I start writing and it takes me somewhere, and the characters write themselves. And there's this, I once went for a rehab because I was drinking a lot. And in the rehab, when they were trying to teach us about addiction, that's when I realized this is how I write. And which is about, when they were teaching us about addiction, and they said, you know what, our brain has this, we only use 8 to 9 to 10% of our conscious brain. But addiction comes from our 90% of the other subconscious brain. We don't realize it. That's where it kind of, the habit starts to form. And writing somehow for me was like that. Once you start writing, you're writing from your conscious brain, and most people, what they do is, they keep reading what they've written. And when you read what you've written, you will never be satisfied. You'll always think this is lesser than what it should have been. So the first thing I learned was, don't read what you write. Just keep writing. And what happens is, if you're writing in a flow, around 15 to 20% way in, your subconscious brain kicks in. And then it starts to flow. Your writing starts surprising you. Suddenly you're like, did I write that? Did I just come up with that line? Because you just surprise yourself, because your characters surprise themselves. And it all comes, and somehow I trust the gut instinct, and I started doing that. And by the time I was on my 3rd script, I started trusting that process. And once I started trusting that process, I tried to figure it out, and I started trying to talk to various writers that I knew or came across and who I admired, especially authors, fiction authors. And I realized a lot of people have the same common process. They just write. They do not sit down and create character sketches. They don't sit down and do plot points. They have one idea or one thread, and the whole writing process is like unraveling a sweater. You start pulling the thread, it all kind of comes in, and then by the end of it, realize it's a one long single thread. And that's how writing is. Everybody has their own process. I think everybody needs to find their own process. This was my process. And I started practicing that in my class in FTI with the students. And I would do individual sessions with each one. And somehow worked. It worked because it was the most productive class in the history of FTI. And each one wrote the script. The most reluctant of them wrote a script. It somehow worked. My last student, I just saw his film yesterday, Pada, Kamal. Such an amazing film. And I was trying to tell him that, please teach me how to make films like that.
So writing is that personal process where you're sort of working it out in your own way and your. But what happens when you now have a crew? You have actors, you have cinematographer, you have locations. What is that process of communication? How do you deal with? I mean, you talk a lot about chaos and
In the beginning, it was difficult. Now it's much more simpler because it's like one person who's leaving finds me another person. So if like my first AD leaves, he gets me the another first AD, and he's already that another first AD is prepared what he's getting into. And my world is built on trust. I am not a person of pre-production, so I'm not a person of a lot of prep because my filmmaking comes from a place where we had no money to make movies. And because we had no money to make movies, we never got what we wanted. So I learned that be prepared for everything. We had no money to build sets. We had no money to get properties. So properties we brought from our own homes. And somehow I realized, I was watching National Geographic. And I was like, you know what, who was stopping me to shoot in the entire city if I don't disturb anyone? And slowly, over a period of time, we evolved a process of shooting movies by following two rules. We don't put camera in a public place on ground, and we do not interfere with people's way of lives. And like a documentary filmmaker meets National Geographic, we started shooting with long lenses. And we started keeping the camera away. We would shoot find a vantage point and shoot. In the beginning, we made mistakes, like we would go too high and all shots were like this. So we started going away from people and probably a floor above, first floor. So it almost looked like eye level. We would put cameras in vans and open the shutter and shoot. We would shoot in the middle of the street. Like whole Black Friday we shot like that. We had no money. So that kind of and the team started enjoying that process. So, and I have worked with very few collaborators over a period of time. And we kind of got into that process. We respected each other's process. And I think slowly when I started working with Rajiv, he also stopped going for recce after 3 films. So me and Rajiv Ravi would sit and say, go there and find a location, tell me what is available. And then we would, it's the perspective that makes it look the way it does. It's not really the location, it's how you look at a place. So it's that point of view that we started working. And me and Rajiv used to work in silence. We just somehow got, and now I've got a mini Rajiv called Sylvester. So it kind of, it's a very organic process, and where the whole team knows that they all come because they're all wanting to be filmmakers, and everybody participates in everything. And after 2-3 films, everybody gets fired and they're forced to make a film, which is why we have an army of people who are making movies, which has come from the same kind of a collective group. We keep pushing each other to go and make a movie. When I'm not making a feature film, I produce short films for my people. I'll write dialogues for someone else. Somebody will do something else for someone else. Because we started building a community like that from one office where we had no money and all we had was, we would make like rice, dal, pickle and one sabji. And that's all that was available. And there was one camera and there was this editing setup, and I think a whole lot of cinema came from there. And that's, for us, the peak period was like 2013 when we had 5 films at the Cannes Film Festival. And all made with no money.
What about actors? You worked with mostly unknown actors, I mean, who of course have become very known faces.
I work with very good actors.
Yeah. How do you cast? Tell us your process of casting.
For me, it's all about, like, I cast based on a personality. And for me, the most important thing in an actor is here, the eyes. And the screen presence is all here. Because unlike theater, when you're performing and you're attracting the audience, it's almost like this whole mating thing that you do. And you use your whole body language and you use voice and you use everything. In films, it's very different because your audience is sitting right here looking into your eyes. When we talk to each other, we look into each other's eyes. That's what the audience does when they're looking at it. And if the truth is not there in their eyes, then it doesn't matter how good their voice is or modulation is or what they do with their body language. So I just look for the truth in their eyes. And when I find it, I get them in. And I generally work with very good actors, so it doesn't matter because we normally don't have those kind of budgets or backing. So I look for we have a team of, we started with Black Friday we started building a casting directors team, and we would go and find actors who are unemployed, doing theater, doing street shows, and would pick them and bring them in, and we kept looking for newer actors. In the beginning, this process of making a film, new actors and shooting without permission was difficult, but now it's become a norm. Like last 10 years has been easy. Since Wasipur, it's been very easy because now everybody gives in to the process. Now we don't need to find actors. They kind of find us. They know if they're good. Now we don't need to find a lot of crew members and people. Everybody now comes and wants to go through the process. And because we came from chaos, so I don't know how to function when everything is in control. I remember I was shooting Bombay Velvet, and first time studio film, everything was such a setup, I was so lost. So I went on the set and I created chaos. So I started giving different instruction to different people. And I personally instructed everyone to do different things. And there was no coordination, there was chaos. I went to Rajiv, let's shoot.
Just to continue with the casting story, tell us, how did you find Nawazuddin?
Nawazuddin, like I remember I was casting for Satya. I was Ramu's film, I was the writer, assistant, casting director, everything. I was casting for the film. And there's a very good actor called Rajpal Yadav who had come to Mumbai, and he was leaving Mumbai because he was very depressed and given up. So one actor called Ashraful Haq, he's passed away now. He was in Black Friday. He told me, can you just talk to this guy and give him some hope? So we met him at the railway station. Rajpal Yadav. Nawaz was carrying his suitcase. That's how I met him. So Rajpal, I said, listen, I'm casting for a movie called Shul. I have a role for you. Why are you leaving the city? So he did a role, one scene role of a coolie, which from where his career whole started. So Nawaz was there, he says, can I also get a role? So I said, there's no other role left. So I can put you somewhere in the, he says, I have no money to eat food. So I'll do anything. So in Shul, he played Rajpal played the coolie and Nawaz was a waiter in a scene with Manoj and Raveena. If you see, there's very thin Nawaz. But that's how it all started. And then when we were doing Black Friday, Sarfarosh had come out and Nawaz had one or two scenes which he was very powerful in that scene. And I remembered that scene. And when we were doing Black Friday, after shooting the interrogation scene, and I was shooting the interrogation scene, and we had no monitors to watch anything. And there's this assistant of mine who's also my researcher, Arpadna. She's a filmmaker now. She made a film. And she was with Nawaz in NSD. And we shot that whole sequence, and Nawaz did this thing where there's this hair stuck on his tongue, which I liked very much, and I did not say cut, and I kept watching him. As I stepped out, Aparna was gushing at him. She was talking to the other girl saying, look at his eyes, he's so beautiful. So when I heard these two girls talking, I came back and I started staring at him. So I said, and then because the room was so dimly lit, all the interrogation scenes were shot in this red light. Dense red light. So I was watching him, and that's when I really saw into his eyes, and I realized, there's this so much in there, and he is so invisible outside. So I liked him. I said, let's do something more. But at that point, I had no idea because my first film was banned, my second film was shelved, my third was shelved. I was the most untouchable pariah of the industry. Nobody wanted to make my movies. So I said, we should keep meeting. And he didn't, in the sense he was traveling, and I started writing Gulal, and Black Friday again got banned by the Supreme Court. And we did not know anything. And at the same time, Nawaz started to do a film with Nandita Das called Firak. And I wanted Nawaz for a film and he was not available. So I got this actor called Deepak Dobriyal in Gulal. And then Deepak did Omkara. You know, it's like a cycle. Deepak did Omkara, and Omkara got him the Filmfare Award, and Deepak became this very big actor. And suddenly Deepak was not available. So I went back to Nawaz. And that's at the same time that Deepak was supposed to do Talash, and he was not available. Something else happened. And then I was looking at Nawaz. I said, you know, I want to do this film. The idea of Wasipur had started to germinate. At the same time, it was hard to sell Nawaz or to anybody, the whole cast. So I started doing what I do generally, like, you know, build actors up over a period of films. So I said, you know what, I want you to do a song for me in Devdi. So he came and did Emotional Atyachar. And then I put him in a song where he plays this band person. And still nobody wanted him. The studio didn't want him. The film was almost 3 days before I was supposed to shoot. It got shelved. No, this is Gangsta. Devdi was shelved for 1 year. Nobody wanted to touch Devdi either. But Wasipur, UTV dropped the film 3 days before the shoot while the whole crew was waiting. And overnight we had to find money, and the shoot got delayed by 5 days because I did not want to let go of my actors. And we stuck by that. And I think what we all saw in Nawaz kind of came through. Also, Rajiv Ravi had shot a short film called Bypass. And Rajiv and me, we kind of work very closely together. He had shot Bypass, which Amit Kumar had directed, and Asif Kapadia had produced, and Nawaz had played the lead. So Rajiv had the same faith in Nawaz. So my whole team was kind of sticking by him. And then it becomes much more easier to fight because, you know, the entire team is with you and say, like, you know, we believe in it. So after that fight was through, luckily for us, after a long time, first time from India, like after 7 or 8 years, India had a film at Cannes, which was Udaan. And because of Udaan, and I was the writer and the producer and everything, suddenly everybody wanted to come around us. And by then, whenever we went into the shoot, Udaan ended up winning every award at home. That's when all the studios came back and said, we'll fund Wasipur. And suddenly, because I think it's always the external factors, they don't see. And then it became kind of easier. And once Wasipur came out, then there's so many films with Nawaz. The same year, Kahani came out. Kahani was shot later, but, you know, it came earlier. Kahani came out, this came out, and this 2-3 films back to back, and it just, yeah, Nawaz arrived.
Just to talk a little about Wasipur, because it sort of, in a sense, was a turning point in your career. It's really a landmark film in Indian cinema. After the Sholais and where, you know, there were all these bad guys and there were the good guys, and you know, Wasipur suddenly sort of broke new ground, not only in the way it was made, the sense of the small town, but also in this kind of trope of about that we've always sort of been used to in Bollywood films. If you could talk a little about that, and where did Wasipur come from? Where did it come
like,
from?
you know,
for you, where did it
it's
come
very, I'll talk about my state of mind then. Because, you know, today it's become so much larger than all of us. It's become so huge and there's so many stories around it. And sometimes you become lost in that. So for me, it was that phase where Udaan had not come out. I had just made Devdi, and Gulal had finished over 8 years. And we finished that film, and I wrote a movie that nobody wanted to produce, The Girl in Yellow Boots. For me, I needed to make that film to exorcise myself. So I started doing lots of commercials to put money together. At the same time, Vikram Motwani had to make Udaan. which he has been struggling for 7 years, which Venu was supposed to shoot. And by the time it happened, Venu was busy. So Vikram had, and Udaan, I was writing while I was shooting Gulal. So Vikram was with me on the set. I was writing the film, his film, and I was going and shooting my film. And he has been waiting around. And Vikram at that time just did not trust anybody. And he was very aggressive and angsty. And I said, nobody will produce his film. He says, he's just such a troubled person, nobody will make his film. I said, your film won't be made till I don't become a producer. I said, I won't become a producer because my films are not releasing. So just sit at home. And that was a joke. And that joke turned out to be true. Because when my films came out and finally I got a chance, and after producing Amir, I said, let's do it at the lowest cost possible. And we somehow scraped together money. That was when Udaan was being shot. I met this boy. I was also, my ex-wife was doing a play which I was producing because we had nothing else to do. And she was performing theatre, and I would stand outside as a producer because I was standing outside as a producer, a lot of people would come with their script. And I met this boy called Zishan who played Definite in the film. And he started pitching to me a kind of a rehashed version of City of God. And I was like, I've seen this movie. And he got very offended. He says, no, this is true. I said, but this is not true. I know this is true. This is a story from Brazil. And he said, no, I'll bring it to you. I'll bring proof for you. So what happened was, next day he came to me with lots of these newspaper cuttings. And he started showing it to me. I started reading it. What he had done was, he had taken City of God as a template and picked up real incidents to fit that template. When I started reading it, I said, where is the rest of it? I said, this is such a beautiful story in itself. It's beautiful in the sense because it was funny. Because these gangsters, I had never seen such idiotic gangsters. And I did not want to do an underworld film. So I said, but these people are idiots. And I was also, at the same time, so many things happened at the same time. I was free. I was amused by these people. I told him, go and do research. I want the entire story. So he said, what he came to me was essentially part of part 2. I said, I want the entire story, the whole origin, everything. I also said that because at around the same time, 2 years before that, I saw a movie called The Best of Youth. I saw it in New York. I was teaching there, and Best of Youth was a 6-hour movie that tells a story set in Italy. It uses all the political events over a period of time to tell a personal story, which I thought was very interesting. Because this was suddenly like, through that one movie, I understood what Italy was all about. Those are the people who, writers and people involved with that film, ended up doing Gomorrah and all those other movies. But Best of Youth is this fascinating movie, and I was like, there's a chance there to tell these stories of these gangsters who fought over a strip of a road. We made the film look bigger, but Wasipur is just a colony, it's a strip of a road. And over 6 decades. And through that 6 decades, I can also tell the story of North India through the political changes. That was also the same time I discovered the new Tamil cinema. I saw Parthiveeran, I saw Nan Kadavul, and Subramaniapuram. And Subramaniapuram was, for me, it kind of resonated with Wasipur, because these are the people who are obsessed with cinema. And they act like the screen heroes. And Subramaniapuram had a bit element of that in the film. Everybody was like fascinated by Rajinikanth and imitating him. So all these things happened simultaneously. And I felt like there is something there. And with that belief, what is something there, I took, Zishan came with a 150-page novella that he had written. And I went with that to Madrid because my ex-wife was shooting for Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara in Spain. I got a free ticket. So because I got a free ticket, I went all the way to Spain. I parked myself in Madrid in a hotel, and I sat down and I wrote till what came out was part one. And that's how it all started. And then the problem came of like I wrote such an expensive movie and we had no money. And studios insisting on casting big stars, and I did not want big stars because it was a very rooted film. And my confidence also came from watching Subramaniapuram and Nan Kadavul and all these films where they were new actors. And what Nan Kadavul did to me was I saw Banaras, where I've grown up, from Bala's eyes. When I saw Banaras from Bala's eyes, I realized Satya was Bombay from Ram Gopal Varma's eyes. And from an outsider's perspective, the city is it's seen very differently. So somehow, what it did to me was because we did not have any money and we changed studios last moment, so I went back to where I grew up. Because my father had a lot of goodwill. I used all his years of goodwill in one film. So all the mines and everything and all the powerhouses and the house I grew up in is now a ghost town. I shot there. Everything so I reinterpreted the story of Wasipur through my own childhood and what I saw and what I remembered. And used all my father's goodwill, and so we managed to make a massive film in that smaller budget. And all that came in was very organic because at the same time we shot in places where films were not shot. So like when we were shooting in a village called Ahrora, and we were shooting that sequence where Sardar Khan is throwing bombs in every house. And we had very excited Shyam Kaushalji, who had just discovered this whole system of how to show bomb blasts. All the action directors get very excited when they find a new way to show something. So he was trying to say, sir, can we get 3-4 houses? And all the village volunteered. Mere ghar mein bhi ek bomb lagao. So everybody volunteered, and then suddenly it's like the whole village became our set and everybody was happy about it. So we had these massive shots of bombs, bomb blasts and this and I found out from my father I need a coal mine shot where the whole mountain is going to be blasted, and he found out and he says 6 hours from here there are these massive mines and they're going to blast the entire mountain tomorrow. So me and Rajiv Ravi and his assistant, we all went all the way there and we sat there and waited for it to blast. And if you see the shot, we have used the entire duration of the shot and we missed the beginning. Because the moment it started, we put the camera on. We missed the beginning, we set up the shot. So in all the sand mining shots, they're actual documented proof that there was sand mining happening. We shot everything, and my second unit was Shlok Sharma and Vicky Kaushal. And Vicky and Shlok would always get arrested for going in there and taking shots that were illegal, and all the stealing coal shots and things that you see from a distance from a tele camera, they're all real things happening. We would wait there and watch them and shoot them. So it's it all came together somehow.